Oh wow. So we're gonna have to recompile literally the whole damn thing. It looks like. Well, this is gonna take a damn long time, isn't it? So let's get the timer running. This is gonna take probably 10-15 minutes. So as usual, we're gonna think of a story to tell. So what story should I tell? Anything to jog my memory. Anything about C++? Whatever. Well, I was talking to Adam earlier today about he's basically setting up a company for the game over in Australia for his part. Like, I already have my company. And one of the things is you got to come up with a name for your company, right? And you got to come up with code names for your project and all that sort of stuff. And in the past, that's always just been hilariously bad. Like when I was working at EA at Waystone, well, we had to figure out like what to call our game company, and so we had like everybody get together in a big room, and yeah, maybe I should turn on the overlay. We had everybody get together in a big room, and we're supposed to figure out like a name for what we should be, and people had beers and other things like that, and we had like about 60 people. And we're up on kind of this stage in this auditorium that's usually used for, big all hands and things like that. We got to figure out what to call ourselves. And that goes off the rails really quick. Like, as soon as somebody's like, Poopy Pants Games, just everybody goes off the rails and starts suggesting stupid crap all the time. And you kind of wonder, like, how do game teams or game companies always come up with names like, like BioWare and stuff like that? Well, they were doctors. Just like, we'll just call it BioWare because, biology, whatever. And then you got other companies like Neversoft. And you're like, well, how'd they come up with the name Neversoft? And you're like, it's a dick joke. Like, the creators were just like, close up Neversoft games because we're ever hard. And you're like, ah, man, we're 3 years old, aren't we? And then people wonder why there's like sexism in the game industry when like the name of your studio is a freaking dick joke, right? I guess maybe it's not as big of a question as it could be when we're doing shit like that. So yeah, we were there at EA trying to come up with a name for the game, and we spent like maybe 4 hours, everybody suggesting names, and we went through this whole process of collecting the names and then voting on them and doing all this other crap. And at the end of it, we didn't have a damn good name at all. Like, the name sucked. I don't even remember what it was. It was just so forgettable and stupid. But it was very clear this, like, design by committee was just awful. It was just not a good idea to do design by committee because we wasted the entire studio's day coming up with names, and of course there are people who thought their names were amazing. Everybody had opinions about things. Well, if there's anything you ever know about engineers, especially, is they always have opinions about everything. They're always right. I think designers and artists have much better opinions most of the time, and they're a lot more congenial than our engineering brethren, me included. We're very good at being critical of people. So studio leadership decided, okay, that didn't work. So what we're gonna do after we tried this like crowdsource our name for our game and for our studio, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have like the leadership teams discuss what the name should be. And so the leadership team and like marketing and all that, did what normal leadership does, which is they take the game name and all that stuff, and they'll come up with a few ideas and things like that, bounce it off each other, have a few nice little lunches, things like that. Come up with a list of names that they think are real good and kind of show the core values of the team. Leadership on larger studios, there's a lot of core values and tenets, and they're important. I mean, they are important, but sometimes those tenets are more important than others. And so they came up with a list of names, and they sent those off to be evaluated and see what resonates. These names resonate with people and stuff like that. And well, of course, they come back and they come up with a name for the game, Dawngate, and the studio name Waystone, because people felt, Waystone and all these sorts of things, like waystones were stones that you would find on the way on your journey, and it would show you the way and all that sort of crap. We've got an error here. Cannot convert argument 1 from tset primitive array to const primitive component address. Do we have to do like, yeah, we have to do like it or get, don't we? Well, it's a CPP file, so, or at least not changing the header. So, waystones were things you would find along your journey, and the studio was just starting off on its journey, right? So Waystone Games would be finding these things along the way to help our studio evolve and grow. And of course, everybody knows what Waystone Games is, right? Yeah, it got canceled and all that, but. And then the name Dawngate for the game, the MOBA that we're working on. And there was some contention over this. Like, all these designers and artists and engineers who had been taken into this room months ago and had voted on these names and everything. This Waystone and Dawngate were not on those lists that were made by everybody in the studio. So some people were pretty pissed, and I remember one of these, an unnamed person, stood up and said, "That name sucks." When like leadership came in and at an all hands on a Friday, which is all rah celebration, came and said, "This game name sucks. We've talked about it with other people, and we really feel strongly like this is really bad, and we shouldn't do it." And it was like one of the most awkward conversations ever, because the studio leader had just finished saying, like, we spent a lot of time, we finally got a name, like we should be all super happy, let's get behind this. And and then dude in front row stands up and he's like, "I'm sorry, but all the work that you've done over the last 2 months and all the focus group testing and all that, me and some other people think it's just utter crap. We don't like you, we hate you," and all that. Of course, said in less absolute terms. And just the look on the leadership's face, that person is just it was the same look, obviously, that they had been giving people on their feedback, on feedback on names and stuff like that for the past month and a half, and they were just sick and tired of it. They're just like, we just need a freaking name. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, a lot of the time. So, and of course, I think the funniest thing was, even after all that whole process and everything else, we have Waystone Games, which just everybody immediately was like, it just sounds like Waystoned Games, which is like, yeah, okay, makes sense. And then the name of the game, Dawngate. Immediately, nobody could tell if you were saying Dawngate or Dawngate, and it's just like, yep. There we go. We spent basically 2 months and just hundreds and hundreds of man hours of work coming up with these names that honestly you should have just gone and had like a little designer lunch and just been like, and the name of the game is that, and just gone with it. Just been like, who gives a damn? Because the more people cared about the name and about trying to find some symbolic meaning behind it and all that, the more the name became just a generic piece of crap, nothing burger, and that was an interesting experience. So to wrap this all up, Adam's trying to come up with the name of his company. So I immediately started off by distracting him and telling him that he should make it a dick joke, and and all that. So we'll see. Just call it Dashkin Games. Who cares? Like, just don't try too hard on the name. So that's one of those things. And of course, nobody's in chat, so I'm telling stories to myself. But I like to assume I'm telling stories to myself in the future, so I'll go back and watch myself compiling when I'm like 80 years old, and I'll be like, I remember the day when I was building that Unreal 4 source engine. I remember those. Those were good times. That was some engaging content. So what else is going on? I mowed the lawn this week. That was cool. I went to the Home Depot and got a lawnmower, and then I mowed the lawn. And now the lawn doesn't look like there's a homeless person living in a house here, even though that's pretty much, because I've been living in an apartment for the last 12 years after getting out of high school. And you just get used to not caring about anything, right? So you don't have to mow the lawn, you don't have to fix your water heater, you don't have to do anything. And as soon as you own a house, you got to do all that crap. What was that Mitch Hedberg joke about? You're not gonna find an apartment depot anywhere. It's just gonna. Those are called convenience stores, and you just buy alcohol and cigarettes there. But yeah, owning a house, you gotta go do stuff like that. You gotta mow the lawn. You gotta go pick up trash. You gotta deal with the neighbors. So my neighbors are nice. So I at least got that going for me. You gotta go complain about people and get the mail and stuff like that. You can't just never answer, never check your mailbox for 5 years because there's always something in there. But yeah, I was trying to mow the lawn with this little crappy push lawnmower, and that just wasn't working at all. You just get you go through and it just, I'd let it go for a couple weeks without mowing it, and all of a sudden I just couldn't mow a damn thing. So yeah, gas powered lawnmower for the win. When now I have a flat lawn, and that's a story about me mowing the lawn this week. It's a really engaging story. I give it a 4 out of 10. To be honest, it's a pretty shitty story. So are there any other good things that happened in my life that are worth sharing with the internet? Probably not. Yeah, everything else is just boring, so there's nothing else to do. So what, today is Wednesday? Yeah, it's Wednesday. That it is. Alright, so we have finished the initial compile, and now we have to compile again because I fixed my compile error. So I'll see how long this takes to link all the DLLs together. It took almost no time at all. So what exactly is this thing bitching about? Like, it should just be component ID. I mean, is it that it's not a const, so we should just get it? And this is just going to be a t-set of primitive component iterator. So I mean, what the hell is it bitching about? Can I convert argument 1 from t-set of primitive component ID iterator to const primitive component thing? Like, are we just gonna call like star on this or something? Template compile errors are just kind of annoying. Yeah, I guess this is star it. Yeah, alright, there we go. So that was what we needed. Alright, so we are finished compiling, so we can get rid of this piece of crap and we can get back to work. So we are going to change our name. We're going to be working on rendering optimizations in Unreal. Nothing too nuts. So let's just make sure we didn't destroy the frickin' universe by iterating over a frickin' t-set. That's been known to happen. Universes have been destroyed for less. Alright. Yeah, that's looking correct. So let's start actually using what we just made. So we need to go to the player proxy and start using the component IDs of the primitives. So let's just make sure it works first. So it should be player proxy actor. And we need the F component IDs, so let's see, capture component, F primitive component ID. So we need to actually get a primitive component. So we want view primitive component. Well, we want the foreground actors for every actor in the world. So we want new primitive component pointers for these things. We're going to be foreground comps and background comps. So is it scene capture component was like get something or other in there? Thank you for following Alfred 3006. Welcome to my incredibly entertaining stream where we work on Unreal and C++ stuff. Right now we're just optimizing how we're getting our objects together to feed into our render target scene captures. So that's kind of what we're doing at the moment. And if you have any questions about Unreal or C++ or whatever the hell you want, just feel free to ask. I'm not trying to do any tutorials, I'm just here to hang out, work on the current project, and that sort of thing. So where is this? We want the... Did I close scene capture component at H? Alright, we want this show only components. Yeah, it's in rendering, isn't it? So we want to grab the render components. Inline components array, actor get components. Alright, so that's what. So let's do this comps right here. This is just actor get components. And let's just append that guy right there. It's not background actors anymore, it's background components. Same for this guy right here. So then we're going to go and we are going to our T set show only IDs. So we're going to reset that guy and we're going to go through every one of these primitive components. So we're going to test out that our modification to the core engine there actually does what we want. So we want show only IDs and we're going to add the component. It's like get component ID, or is it just component ID? It's just component ID. Nothing too nuts. So we're doing this every frame at the moment. We're going to optimize that. We're just making sure that we can get our foot in the door and that what we expect to happen is actually what will happen once we get all this set up. We're not Unreal 4 masters. We're not by any stretch of the imagination that. So that should do it, and we should see all of our stuff rendered exactly the same. So we should have it work exactly as it already did. And it looks exactly the same, which is exactly what we want. Like that big ass tree in the way. Really need like some distance fog and everything else coming in the background. It'd be pretty cool. Or that super flat terrain in there. But it looks like it's actually starting to come together a little bit. Oh, look at that! You can see under the terrain there. That is interesting. Wow, I would not have thought of that. Because we've got the terrain kind of right here. And I guess we actually need to have it come forward. Interesting. It's because we've got basically two cameras going on here. So we can dig on our platforms. Dig, 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 dig. can dig in the air. Ah. Oh wow, yeah, that looks really, really shitty right there. You can see basically that this floor here, you can't have a floor come up and meet. Because it changes. It changes. That's another thing to think about when we're making all of our terrain, is that nice little things like this look okay, but when we have 3D objects in that foreground, they actually move relative to everything else, so we're gonna have a lot of problems getting those to look non-shit. Not a problem though. We can just blame our artists for all of our things that look like crap. At least that's what I'm gonna do. That's their jobs, right? They're supposed to make things look good. So what we need to do now is we need to figure out a good way to add and remove our actors, our primitive components, based on these tags. So basically, we want to make a function here that's like register primitive component and then like unregister. And it's like register actor, and then it's like unregister actor. And what we'll be doing is grabbing the primitive components off of them and then like adding and removing them based on the tags on the actor that we put in the editor and stuff like that. So we're gonna need a T set of component props. I mean, we've already got a T set. Yeah, we have already got a T set. So maybe we should just use the current one on the capture components. So basically, we would call if the actor is null pointer. Now we're just going to return. So let's get to work here. Let's actually start doing some actual work. These are going to be public methods. So let's do that. And I'm going to try to, I wonder if there's some sort of delegate I can bind to for when an actor activates or deactivates, because that's what I want to bind to, is something like that. So we're going to have to find that. Alright, so we're going to have to go through for every primitive component comps. We are going to have to do things. So for registering it, we're basically doing this like add foreground, add background thing. And this is just for like foreground stuff and all that, and stuff that shouldn't be moving in the editor. So we're not gonna update. Once we've registered something, we're not gonna change it. And let's go ahead and do like a get scene capture component. Like, let's just do like a get foreground capture and get background capture, and we'll replace this with actual better code. Just like make these getters do the stupid crap we got going on right now. So we can just, we'll replace it with cached versions of these things later. Basically, it's just this whole block of bullshit at the moment. Let's just get foreground capture, so let's see, we'll just return capture on the 2D here. Otherwise, return null pointer. Hooray, getters that are really shitty. Because we've actually figured out how we're going to be rendering stuff, so now we can actually start turning it from awful, horrible code. Yes. This whole block of bullshit. It is all just a bunch of crap. We basically were trying to figure out how we were going to, how to get our rendering set up properly. Because I don't know if you know anything about what I'm working on. But I can boot it up real quick and show you. I'm working on Dashkin, which is this 2D, well, 2.5D sort of game with Adam Phillips, who's the artist. And it's a game where you play as Bitey, who's a very fast character. He's got horns, it looks pretty cool. And he's going to be running around the world of Brackenwood, super quick. And Adam is a 2D animator. He's made the whole Bitey of Brackenwood series, and he also works on like Bob's Burgers and things like that. He's an assistant director for him. He's probably working on Bob's Burgers right now. So we needed to figure out how we're gonna set up our cameras. So kind of the idea is, if this is the camera over here, we have this 2D track which we're running along. And we want like a 3D background, so there's like there's a 3D background, and there's also a 3D foreground. And by 3D I mean the space here along the track, we want an orthographic projection on that, so a flat thing. What's frustrating me? Everything frustrates me, so it's not really Unreal. But the so we're just figuring out how we're gonna draw it. What is frustrating me? The big thing there the past couple of days has been getting the camera rendering stuff, like in Unity and things like that. You get cameras that you can position, and then you can easily just render those to things. And in Unreal, that was much more difficult to kind of mess around with. So we got like our 3D background, we have our orthographic track there, and then we have a 3D foreground. And this is all just like placeholder, really shitty assets that I threw in today. It's just we're very early on in development, so we're just, you know, figuring out what we can do. And like these are just like some awful trees that I threw with just like random angles and shit to see how stuff works. And these are just all placeholder rough assets which Adam drew for me. But yeah, so this is basically how we're running our camera. And you know, these are some tests of like, yeah, 3D stuff doesn't look too good in the foreground, but 2D stuff can look good in the foreground if it's not obscuring everything. So we can do work with that. Yeah, in order to get like a scene, basically in Unity, I could just do a camera, and splicing together these sorts of scenes was like super easy. But Unreal's rendering, you can't really do that. You have to set up like a render target texture, and a scene capture 2D, which will render to that texture target with like a specific color or all your stuff like that, and then you have to project that onto a plane that uses a material that uses that render target texture. And then you position those planes perfectly in your orthographic main camera, because you can't have more than one camera. You can't just call like do render pass like you could in Unreal. I mean in Unity. Like you actually have to set everything up within Unreal's editor, and you don't have nearly as much control over the rendering stuff. But that made me rage quit yesterday because I was trying to do stuff that was all stupid. But today, I think I like ate my breakfast, so I'm not all cranky. So I'm actually making some progress. But I'm always terribly, terribly vexed. Anyway, so that's what we're doing, and right now we're kind of optimizing how we are adding our objects and removing our objects from the list of things to draw for our scene captures. So let's get our captures here. And it is our show only IDs. We're going to add comp. What was it? What made us choose Unreal? Do we have a lot of experience with Unity? So I'll answer the first one first. My experience with Unity is pretty limited. When I was back at Amazon, we made a mobile game in Unity, which was streaming a 3D game from a server to a Unity app on your mobile Kindle device. So we had like a big server running big beefy video cards, streaming like all the video to the small device that couldn't actually render all that stuff. It would just show the video. That was pretty cool. But it was horribly hacked together and awful in so many ways. I was working more on the server portion of that too, so I didn't have too much experience with Unity there. So when I decided to leave Amazon, I needed to get started on making my own projects, and so what I did was I booted up Unity, and I was using Unity from October to about December. And I was able to put together like a 2D side-scrolling brawler game with like all the bells and whistles and all that sort of stuff. Got to kind of like one playable level sort of thing. And it works real well. But when I approached Adam and was like, maybe we should work on Dashkin together and we should make this game, one of the things was he really wanted to use Unreal because he wants like the cool 3D stuff. He wants to learn Unreal because it's a more marketable skill as an engineer if you want to like get back into the workforce, and more marketable for him as an artist because there are just more studios using Unreal 4. They're usually bigger projects, which usually means there's more people on those projects, which usually means they hire more people, just like kind of by nature. And if you're a more senior person like me and Adam, getting onto those projects, that's kind of where you gravitate towards. So it's a marketable skill that we wanted to learn. Not that Unity is not a marketable skill, but Unreal 4 is the marketable skill that we preferred. And there's also the I don't know Unreal, so I want to learn Unreal. So a number of factors, but it wasn't just check the box and we're going to use Unreal because it's like out of the box better or something. In fact, if I wasn't on the team, there really wouldn't be any option. Adam would have to be using Unity because using Unreal without being able to edit all the source code and set up all the builds and like do all the crazy stuff as an engineer just really isn't nearly as friendly as Unity. So, long story short, because we decided to, and we're sticking to it. Biggest thing I like about Unreal versus Unity is if I don't know how to do something on Unreal, I can crack open the source code, see how Unreal does it, and then if I don't like how Unreal does it, if I'm super pissed off about it, I can just go change it and then recompile the engine. And that's actually really done some work for us in this project. Maybe not in the current stuff, but back when I was just setting up nuts and bolts, definitely doing some work with that. Okay, so that's going to call register on those guys. For these guys, since these are sets, we're just going to grab the background captures, go over all the components, and we're just going to call remove on the sets themselves. So yeah, Unreal is open source. The servers were G2 instances on Amazon. So yeah, that was when you're working on some projects with Amazon, a lot of their stuff is about dog fooding and using your own tech. So we were using everything that publicly available to all of our customers. And yeah, Unreal is open source. Like, I can go to, GitHub, and this is in Unreal right here. I can just go and just look at like exactly what all the code does. So, I can just crack it open and start looking at like, well, the audio mixer. What sort of stuff is in the audio mixer? There's the code. Just right there. So if you're looking for some example like, I'm not sure how to use a map, or I'm not sure how to use this graphics thing, you can just be like, well, the editor has a little window here that shows this sprite widget the way that I want it, and then you can kind of poke around for that code and find what it is and go do stuff with it. So yeah, you just have to sign up on Unreal site, and then you get access to their GitHub. And kind of how you work is you pull down a copy of Unreal into your project. Like we've got right here, we've got the Unreal 4 engine as kind of a sub project, and Dashkin is the project we're working out of in Visual Studio. So that's kind of what we're doing there. Yeah, I worked at Amazon Game Studios over in Seattle for about 3 years. Alright, so that all compiled. So now we need to figure out, we need a way to like register and unregister actors. So when actors become activated in our scene, we're gonna want to add them to our list to be rendered. So let's go ahead and break all of our stuff here. So if foreground does not equal null pointer, we're going to check if our foreground show only IDs .num. If that's 0, then we're gonna and is active is that streaming game was incredibly unsuccessful. There are many reasons for that. So if the num is 0 and foreground is active, then we are going to say foreground deactivate, and if you want to know more about that streaming thing, basically there was a big, if you remember, God, what was that streaming service, OnLive? Basically, when, yeah, there's a lot of stuff right now for streaming games from servers, and where it's like, okay, like we have Wi-Fi everywhere, and we have these screens. There's a screen all over the place. There might even be a screen on the door to your refrigerator. And if we can build technology which can stream video to all these screens all over the world, then we can centralize all of our compute into 1 or 2 places, and then we can just stream out all this information, have amazing video and experiences for everybody everywhere. And that whole bandwagon has been jumped on, and Amazon jumped on it hard as well, because, well, who's going to make the most money if everybody decides to, put all of their compute into one place? It's going to be the big hosting providers like Amazon, Google App Engine, and stuff like that, right? They're the big boys with servers. So if they build the technology to make it possible, boom, market share, just right there. It's smart. So this project we were working on was the game is called The Unmaking, and basically the idea was we were putting this game out for these cheaper, Amazon's target for the tablet market is usually on the cheaper end for like e-readers and stuff like that. So the idea was, we've got all these cheap screens. Let's get this game out there for Christmas for the new Gen 7 Kindles and everything like that are coming out. They're like less than $100, back a couple of years ago. And it's going to be this big push. We're going to get some games on it. And, it's going to be super awesome because that's just what we do. So if it's not active, then we need to activate. So yeah, we shipped this thing on for Christmas time, and you had 1 server per person. So you'd have 1 server that was like this G2 instance, beef graphics card for every person who was hooked up with a Kindle. So we just had thousands of servers and stuff like that for this game. But there are some pretty big problems. So to stream video for a game from a server, it's not like watching a YouTube video, right? Like, you can't just, if your YouTube video has some latency, that's not a problem. It's just video. You just buffer it for a few seconds and then you keep playing. It's not a problem. If the audio is out of sync a little bit, you can kind of catch up. Not a problem at all. But with a game, it has to, latency is huge. Like 100 milliseconds is too much. So you can't just stream everything down as video for an active game. And of course, we're dealing with cheaper hardware here, right? So we got like a sub $100 tablet, and the reason these things are cheaper is because they're using cheaper components. And one of the cheaper components, of course, is the Wi-Fi card. And Wi-Fi is really bad for dropping packets. And if we're using UDP as our protocol, we're just sending stuff across there. And if we miss any packets in our picture, we have, like a crappy picture, we're going to have a lot of problems. So We literally had like the worst possible device to stream this to, right? It's this cheap tablet which has a crappy Wi-Fi card, which is attached to, like, it's not crappy for most things. It's just like, you know, it's not a $500 tablet. It's a $90 tablet. It's not. It's a good value Wi-Fi card. It's not, you know, the most amazing thing ever. So it's going to drop some packets. And then, of course, we're over a protocol and a system that drops packets all the time. Wi-Fi drops packets, that's just what it does. So it was just awful. Like, it just didn't work, pretty much. Like, it was hilarious. We had one of the guys went down to demo it because, you know, everybody in the office who would be running this, like, we couldn't even run the damn thing in the office because we'd have to have a Wi-Fi router on literally everybody's desk to be able to have enough bandwidth to stream from, like, our desktop computers to our Kindle devices. So, like, it was just so funny. Everybody had blinders on because, like, oh. Anyway, the game was also super expensive because you have to have a whole server. And these servers were not just like crappy servers, these are good servers. These are just, you know, these are like the things under your desk that are just bricks of power. You know, these are the things that Intel would roll out to demo their game at, you know, GDC or whatever. You know, we got them all racked up. They're good things. So we're talking like literally it costs, you know, 50 cents an hour for the server to operate with the person connected to it. So if you're not a quarter machine, you're losing money just straight out. So we basically made this giant tech demo at there for this stuff, and that's what we did. And it did work. If you had good Wi-Fi and you were, you know, sitting right next to your Wi-Fi router at home, then you could play a real HD game on a little tiny screen. And that was pretty cool. That's what we did. There was a lot of interesting technology behind it, but ultimately, you know, we're not making 50 cents an hour on those games. In fact, it didn't work that well, so we didn't even charge money for the game. We just gave it out there, proving that we could do it. And basically, you know, they threw all this money at this question, and the question was, can we make a game that does this and is profitable? And the answer was just no chance in hell. So if this is 0, so if background is active, I'll just fix this stuff real quick. Yeah, that's kind of how games are, though.
The year is 2076. The world as we know it has been taken over by machines, driving humans to the brink of extinction. Earth's salvation is left to a man made half flesh and half robotics. We call him the superhuman.
Because that was kind of interesting. Amazon doesn't even list the price of G2s. let me see if that's EC2 pricing, and take a look at it. Because we're running Windows boxes. Oh wow, they don't even have them on here, do they? Yeah, shit. That's great. That is absolutely hilarious. You see, they gotta have like EC2 graphics instances. Do they have those still? Are they P2s? Yeah, so I guess they're replacing. They're not G2s now. They're P2s now, and they look a little bit beefier. So like the price per hour is again like 90 cents on those things. Yeah, but it was even worse than that. Like we couldn't do spot instances because the guys who made it, basically how the servers would work is the server you're always running at 100% capacity. If you had 2,000 servers there sitting waiting for customers, literally you had 2,000 servers waiting on at like the start screen waiting for a customer to get there. So it was just like the most. You're just like, it didn't matter if we had 1,000 people playing or one person playing. We were paying like, you know, a couple $1,000s an hour just to like keep the thing running, which is just an abhorrent amount of money. Like, it's like imagine you got just like a vault of gold, and then you just have like a hole in the floor over in the corner. Like, that's basically what was going on the whole damn time. So we had to shut it off. Just oh man, it's fun times. And a lot of games just get thrown away. I think that was my big issue there when I was at Amazon, is that we have Amazon's big deal is its brand name, right? Its brand value is insane. People trust Amazon with everything. Even the government trusts Amazon to store government data. Like that's how much trust there is. You know, where you have the CIA, you know, using the government stuff there, or whatever. That's how good Amazon's brand is. So I had a lot of problems there getting products off the ground because they're like, well, are they good enough to have the Amazon name in there? All right, so we have just the orthographic stuff there, which is good. So now we just need to hook up those register and unregister component calls, and we will have more optimal graphics. You're considering working at Amazon. Amazon is a great place for a lot of people. I specifically worked at Amazon Game Studios in Seattle, and one of the really good things about Amazon is they pay very well for the work, and they're very fair. As employers, you're not going to find a better employer-employee relationship in terms of professionalism. Like they got great healthcare, great HR. You know, you have a problem, people are there to help you. And plenty of benefits of like, you know, I need to take a shuttle to some other part of the campus. Boom, there's a shuttle there. It just works. You know, if you have a problem with Amazon, you got a problem with your boss. It's not like you have a problem with the company. What I didn't like about Amazon was that it kind of stagnates. Like with creative processes, there's kind of a mentality to the creative process in game development and entertainment projects where if you get paid too much, I believe you start to think you're kind of better than you are. And it doesn't have to do with how much money you get paid and like your overall compensation. It has to do with how much money you get every week. Because if you're getting like a big paycheck every month, you just kind of, if you're upset with the project and the creative process, you get complacent because you're just like, well, I'm getting paid enough that I can go home and just drink my problems away instead of actually dealing with them. I'm fine, you know, doing this. And at other companies, usually creative people more work off of yearly bonuses.